welcome to Moms on Mics. I'm Joanne.
I'm Cash.
This episode is a continuation of last week's autopsy reports. So, Dr. Frank Peretti testified as a witness for the prosecution in the Jesse Miskelly trial on January 26th to February 4th, 1994. Dr. Frank Peretti is a forensic pathologist. He performs medical and legal autopsies for the state of Arkansas to determine the cause and manner of death. Dr. Peretti testified that the body of Michael Moore was bound in a hogtied fashion with shoelaces. The wrists were bound to the ankles bilaterally with black shoelaces on both sides. And like we said last week, there were multiple injuries: the head, face, neck, and chest, abdominal injuries, lower extremity injuries, back injuries, upper extremity injuries, injuries to the inside of the body, plus evidence of submersion. So Peretti explained that two different instruments or weapons were being used: an object with a broad surface, wide surface area, a long approximately 2 to 3 or 3 to 4 inches in diameter. He explained there were lacerations or cuts on the scalp that were somewhat irregular. Some are straight, some have a stellate appearance, and some of the injuries indicate an object of a smaller diameter, such as a piece of wood, a 2x4, a stick, or broom handle, are capable of inflicting these types of injuries here. So Peretti also stated that there were some abrasions, contusions, or bruisings behind the ear, and some scattered abrasions that were under the scalp on the left side. The slight discoloration is the bruising behind the ear and discoloration, abrasion, or scrape behind the ear. In the hairline, there was an abrasion or scrape. There was a similar abrasion in the back of the neck and the back of the shoulders, showing an abrasion, a contusion, a bruising. The prosecution also asked if there were any findings regarding the examination of the anal area regarding dilation. Peretti said yes. There was an anal dilation, a loosening or slacking of the muscles surrounding the anal area. When asked, was there also the purple, or is there some abrasions in or on the buttock? Peretti explained, you can see some abrasions and scrapes in the post-mortem lividity. The red discoloration is the post-mortem lividity, or the settling of the blood vessels after death. So the bruising the prosecution is referring to is from the body putting pressure on the area after death. The prosecution also asked if he found some defensive type wounds on the hands, to which Peretti indicated that yes, there were.
Peretti then moved on to the mucosal surface of the inner aspects of the lips and the upper lip and the lower lip, respectively, and also the nose. On the nose, there were some abrasions or scrapes. On the upper lip, some cuts are surrounded by contusions and edema or swelling. When asked, in your past experience as a medical examiner, have you seen similar injuries to the ears of children? And in those cases, were they frequently also accompanied by injuries to the child's mouth? And based on your past experience and expertise and training, do these type of injuries indicate to you, based on your expertise and training, a particular type trauma that has occurred to cause those injuries? Peretti states, well, my practice, these type injuries I have seen in children that are held by the ears who are forced to perform oral sex. They can also be due to putting a hand over the mouth to cause the injuries to the mucosal surfaces of the lips, or they could be by grabbing someone by the ear and just pulling. However, Peretti stated in his autopsy report that there were no signs of sexual assault on any of the boys. He fails to mention that anal dilation is actually something that happens to a dead body that is submerged in water for some time. This is most likely why he noted on the autopsy that there were no signs of sexual assault. Keep this in mind when we talk about his testimony for other two boys. Also, because he does the same thing when testifying about their injuries. He testified that the cause of death for Michael Moore was drowning and that the head injuries described, the skull fractures, injuries to the brain, would have caused his death independently of the drowning. Peretti testified that Stevie Branch had injuries to his head, chest, genitals, lower extremity, upper extremity, back, and evidence of terminal submersion. He found that the right ear showed multiple confluent contusions or bruises and abrasions, multiple scattered abrasions present over the right eye, a contusion in the right periorbital region or black eye, multiple scratches present on right mandible. On the right mandible, there was a patterned injury. It was a bell-shaped abrasion. It had a central area of pallor, an abrasion by pallor, an area of clearing and scraping. The lips were abraded. There are multiple lacerations or cuts. The inner aspects of the lips showed multiple contusions, lacerations, and hemorrhage. The gums were extensively hemorrhagic. Also above and below the left eyebrow, we have another bell-shaped pattern abrasion with a small quarter-inch laceration in the immediate vicinity. Also, the left parietal scalp showed multiple superficial cuts and abrasions. The entire left ear was contused or bruised with overlying linear scratches.
Okay, so I want to touch on this bell-shaped patterned abrasions a little bit because if any of you have watched, and I highly recommend it, the West of Memphis documentary, there's a part in there where they actually have these turtles that this one guy lets this turtle bite his arm. And the shape of a turtle's mouth, if you can kind of envision it, leaves like a bell shape.
Does it really?
It does. And it's like I would say bell shape because this is what I'm assuming they're describing is, and actually in that documentary, they show the bites on the guy's arm. Like he literally takes a turtle and attaches the turtle and the turtle is like hanging on his arm, like by its mouth. And then they show when they take the turtle off, you can see the mark. And then they show the crime scene photos or the autopsy photos. They're identical. They're completely identical. They're clearly the same mark. They look identical.
That's why I have to watch it because for me, when you say bell-shaped, I kind of just get like an outline of a hammer.
Okay, so think of a triangle.
Right.
Now round those edges.
Okay.
But take off the bottom line. So you've got like the two that come to a point at the top.
Right.
And now round that top, and then you've got the lines that come down.
Okay.
That would be the bell shape.
I think of like a natural bell, right? So to me, that's what I'm like, how does that work?
It's basically like a flat, like if you took a piece of paper and drew a bell, like you just get one-dimensional bell, right?
Right.
So which is like a triangle. And so that's what this is. They are fucking identical. There is no mistaking that this wound is from the mouth of a turtle.
Which they've noted that there has been snapping turtles.
Yeah. Also in this documentary, they talk to a lot of kids that would have been kids at the same time, like Christopher and Stephen and Michael's ages at the time. So they're like 20, whatever, when the documentary is going. But they basically said they all knew to stay out of the water there because the turtles bite you. This water is filled with these turtles, and they have some turtles that are called alligator turtles in this area because they snap and bite so much and they take chunks out of you. Like in this documentary, they put like a pig's carcass into water and you get to see the turtles attack this pig carcass. It could not make it any more clear. The majority of these injuries are animal predation.
All from being in the water.
Yeah. The claws on the turtle, like as the turtle's biting at the pig carcass, they're scratching. So all the marks that are said to be caused by knives are scratches from the turtles. And the claws, I want to say it's 3 claws, it could be 4, whatever is on the marks that they're making on the pig carcass. Again, the photos are identical to the marks they're making or the marks on the bodies.
See, that's why I said it would be interesting to know the before the animal stuff came in.
We're going to get into it. After we go over Dr. Peretti's, we're going to go over a more educated, more...
I was going to say, isn't there
better?
One yeah. Very much credentials?
Yeah, so this guy is not board certified. This
Right.
isn't the guy that had the mail-in PhD that he got. This isn't that guy, but this guy, so basically he can still be the autopsy guy, but he's not board certified. So you get 5 attempts to take the test to become board certified, and he failed twice. and then declined to take the test anymore due to personal reasons.
And I think some people, when you're doing this case, need to remember
Exactly.
that not everyone is actually like into this.
Yeah. And the other thing to keep in mind too is when you have experts that come and testify on a case, like they come to the trial and they testify, those experts are brought in by either the defense or the prosecution. They're not a third party, what is it? They're not a third party unbiased expert. Right. So the defense lawyer is going to specifically go out and look for they might go to like three different doctors and say, what's your opinion on this? And they might agree with the prosecution. So they move on to the next one until they find one that agrees with them. Same with the prosecution, though. So when people say the defense just paid for their expert, so did the prosecution.
Right.
So they are experts. Like, I'm not discrediting that they're experts, but I mean, even in something as simple as childcare, we all have a different opinion of what's best for kids. None of those opinions I shouldn't say none. Most of those opinions, if you're a good childcare provider, they're right opinions. Even though they could be different, it doesn't make them not right. So I think like everybody could have a different opinion of the same thing with an autopsy of where they believe the wounds come from. The only time it shouldn't be a different opinion is if you have a gunshot wound. That should be clear. If someone was, say, decapitated, if someone doing the autopsy was like, I don't know if they were decapitated. Well, if their head's missing, they're fucking decapitated.
Right?
Like, there are certain parts that are going to be very clear. This is what it should, they're missing a lung. I don't know. It might be in there somewhere. No, if it's not there, it's not there, right? Like, so there's certain things that this should be, but everything else is going to be opinion based. You've got to back those opinions up with what you feel backs that up, but they still could differ from expert to expert. So they're not necessarily not correct. But
I think it's just more the fact too is that knowing that back in 93, there wasn't as strict policies put in place for some things too.
yeah,
Like, even though, yes, he could be an examiner, a medical examiner, right? But he didn't pass the board. So technically, he should still have someone over him that would help oversee it. And
whether that's a rule or not, whether in the States, state per state, whether it's the rule here, I'm going to say I'd really think that we should make that a rule. To do an autopsy on someone that like passed of old age or passed of cancer or passed of that's fine. You might not need the head guy for that because it's pretty obvious what happened. But if there's a discrepancy, like if it's a trial, if it's, if we're talking, you could potentially send someone to death row based on, let's get the top guy. Let's get the top autopsy guy just to be sure. Like, let's not get someone that's like, hey, look, I took the test twice and I failed, but trust my opinion. Fuck off.
yeah.
I'd rather someone else's opinion that took the test and passed. Just throwing it out there.
Or just if you're doing a case like this, just get someone that is just forensic.
Yeah.
Because this is almost like a kind of like when you go to school for a practicum. That's almost like what it would be, right?
Yeah.
Like you have someone overseeing you. You can do the job, but you still have someone there that.
Yeah. Let's just have someone to come and double check your work, right?
Yeah. The entire left side of the face, in an area measuring 5.5 by 5 inches, showed multiple abrasions or scrapes with multiple gouging type irregular cutting wounds. These wounds went from 1/8 of an inch to 1 3/4 of an inch and terminated in the oral cavity. The face was showing the abrasions and the gouging type cutting wounds. There was also a pattern abrasion that looked like a bell. It almost has the appearance of a buckle belt. The face showing the abrasions, the gouging, cutting wounds, and contusion and bruising, and the previously described superficial lacerations and abrasions involving the scalp region. Peretti testified that due to the size and different shapes of wounds, he believed there to be 3 different weapons used.
Okay, so remember earlier he said he believed there were 2 different weapons used, and now he's switched it to 3. So just saying how much we believe in Peretti's work, he seems to change his mind.
At the same hand, though, again, I personally would just go back to what his education in that is, right?
Oh, for sure.
That that
100%.
alone, that alone would take me and my thoughts and feelings towards his testimony.
Yeah. We acknowledge that we are not doctors, but that's almost worse, right? The fact that we can read through his testimony and read through his autopsy report and be like, what the fuck? That doesn't make sense. And not because, like, it doesn't make sense because we don't understand what these super large words mean. It doesn't make sense because it was 2 weapons, now it's 3 weapons. You think that looks like what? That doesn't look like that. As a non-medical personnel, I can look at the pictures of these wounds, and as someone that has a son that wears a lot of belt buckles, I can say that absolutely does not look like. And when they say belt buckle, I'm assuming like the cowboy style belt buckle,
Right. Yeah, me too.
right?
That's how I'd picture it.
Yeah. But either way, it doesn't look like a normal belt buckle or the like cowboy style belt buckle. They don't look like that. It looks like the bell, absolutely. The bell shape, I totally see that. But the belt buckle, not at all. It doesn't resemble that at all. Either style of belt buckles. So
I just think he's confusing.
he is. And I mean, maybe he doesn't have a lot of experience of like this, what we're reading now is not his autopsy report. This is from his trial testimony. So maybe he doesn't have a lot of experience testifying in trial and he's getting confused. But I mean, he has his autopsy report right there to reference. Like,
And also, he also went to school for this, so you would think it
yeah,
would in the program.
right. I mean, when you go to school to become an autopsy person, see that I'm right there. I can't remember what they're called, so whatever. But when you go to school for that, you have to assume that, like, hey, I'm going to do autopsies on people. There's no way I'll ever have to testify in a trial, right? The fuck? Of course you will.
I think that's what makes him sound like he doesn't know his job properly. Like,
Yeah,
that's where he fails at it, because even if he didn't never ever had to testify, he technically would be still writing a report.
yeah. You should
So,
know your shit regardless.
yeah.
And I mean, maybe we're being mean, but fuck yeah, we are. You're talking 3 dead 8-year-olds and 3 teenagers that you sent to jail for 18 years. One of them on death row. You should know your shit.
Yeah.
We are going to be hard on you because if you need to stand committed behind what you've said, and you can't even commit to how many weapons were used. That's your job. So he was asked if he thought the injuries to the ears of Stephen Branch were of the same nature as the kind described in regarding to Michael Moore, to which he said he believed they were, stating the injuries noted to the ears and lips can be caused by holding ears, pulling the ears. The injuries involving the lips could be having an object, any object, inserted inside the mouth or hands placed over the mouth, or a firm object placed over the mouth. It could also be from being a punch also, or a hit with a rock, for example. That's how you sustain those types of injuries. So again, not that I doubt that there's not multiple ways to cause an injury. This point, like if you're hit in the mouth with a rock, I'm going to guess you're going to break a tooth.
Yeah.
Especially on an 8-year-old. There was no broken teeth, right? So I'm going to say, okay, that probably rules out the rock theory. Either you're not hit that hard so that you don't break your teeth, so they're not, all these injuries didn't come from that then, or you have broken teeth. You're hit in the face with a fucking rock, you're going to break teeth. Kids fall off slides and break teeth. Kids bite shit and break teeth. Like
you're hit in the front of the mouth, then your front teeth would be broken.
And he doesn't talk about severe damage to the gums. He states in his autopsy that the teeth are in good shape.
Yes.
So what were you hit in the mouth with that caused these severe injuries but didn't damage the teeth? Just saying.
But I think also it depends too on, because they said they have injuries in their mouth, right?
Yeah.
So they could also be biting on their cheeks, which
Yeah.
would protect their mouth here, so it'd be here. Or if they got hit in the mouth, how did they not miss their nose or break the jaw part, right?
Exactly. So you know what else makes all these little tiny cuts and abrasions and skin that's missing? Turtles.
I need to see one of these turtles.
For sure. I mean, so they have turtles that are all different sizes, right? So if you
Right.
think of the little tiny turtles, they're the ones taking the little bits of skin off. A lot of these injuries, like the lacerations and stuff, that they're claiming is done by knives, knives don't remove the skin. Even
Right.
the serrated knife, you're just cutting. Like, I have sliced my finger with a serrated bread knife. It's still a cut, it's still a straight cut, just like a straight edge knife is. There's no jagged bits of skin missing just because it's a serrated knife. It still cuts. If you're sawing with a serrated knife, you're going to get the jagged bits, but these are cuts. So the ones, like they're saying they're basically being cut with them, right? But that's not, the injuries they're jagged and there's bits of skin missing. That doesn't happen from a knife. A
Right.
knife does not pull skin away. It just doesn't. So the littler turtles are making the littler wounds. The bigger turtles that are also there are making the larger wounds. It makes sense to me. I don't know. Especially after watching the turtles go after the pig carcass. I'm like, that's exactly what it would be with
I'll
my
have to watch.
non-medical experience. Peretti then went on to say there are injuries to the penis and the anus. The anus showed dilation and hyperemia of the anal mucosa. The midshaft of the penis and the head of the penis had contusions, bruising, and overlaying scratches. There was discoloration and bruising. There are fine scratches overlying the head of the penis, along with the focal areas of the bruising. Okay, so if it is made post-mortem, there's a lack of bruising, right? The friends that were talking on that documentary that were saying we stay out of the water because you dip your toe in there and a turtle snaps it instantly. So if these boys drowned, they were alive when they went into the water. So the instant an animal took a bite, scratched, there would still be bruising because their hearts are still pumping. We don't know how long it took them to drown. So we don't know how long their hearts were pumping to cause bruising, right?
Well, it kind of makes sense though, because weren't they face down in the water?
Yeah.
Because that would muffle their screams
Yeah.
instead. Because if they went to try and scream, they were getting water in their mouth.
And they were beaten prior to going in the water, right? They may have been unconscious, so they couldn't have fought back, and they're tied up. I'm sorry, this sounds really horrific, but the turtles were biting them like they were alive.
Right.
The turtles are biting them. There was nothing they could have done.
Right.
So you did get bruises. The issue is Peretti and Fogelman, like the prosecution, they're basically claiming because there's bruising, which meant all this happened prior to death, means it couldn't have been the animal predation. Why? What is your reasoning for that? They drowned, so they were alive when they went into the water. Their hearts were still beating. They're still going to bruise.
Right.
They couldn't fight back because they're tied up. So they might not have even been conscious. We don't know. So whatever happened to them just happened. There was nothing they could have done about it. So there's going to be the bruising. That doesn't mean it was part of the attack.
Right.
And all the fine scratches, again, the turtle claws. All this, if you look at the pictures, which I don't recommend because they are kind of gruesome, but if you did, where all these major lacerations and cuts and stuff are, there's scratches. So when a turtle is biting, they're floating up, but they're basically scratching as they're biting. Not that they're scratching to attack, but their claws are moving. They're using do they have paws? Limbs. They're using their limbs to keep them floating where theyey're floating, right?
Okay.
If they stop moving, they'll sink. So they're swimming. I'm doing really great hand motions here that I just clued in. None of you all can see. I'm like, look, see, I'm explaining. Y'all can't see that. But their hands are moving to keep them swimming, to keep them to where the body is so that they can keep feeding, basically.
And I was just going to say, I wonder why they were scratching.
And that's why. Yeah. They're not like attacking, scratching. They're just swimming.
Well, I was going to say, what are they trying to do? Get their meal down? But that makes
Nope.
sense.
Yeah. So when asked if he had an opinion as to what type of instrument or what could have caused the bruising, lacerations, and injury to the penis, he replied, that the injuries could be from oral sex. They could also be from a squeeze, a very tight squeeze, but also with a clear band of demarcation between the uninvolved and involved surfaces. It could have been that an object could have been placed around the penis and tightened very fastly. Okay, so again, I'm going to give you some kind of horrific image. I'm so sorry. Y'all know what fish do. They have a very circular mouth when it opens, and they grab onto things, and they like basically make like a sucking. But this band that they're talking about could have been a fish, or again, a turtle trying to take, like, to feed, right? Like, because I mean, he basically said it's something wrapped around and squeezed. Have you ever put your finger in a fish tank with like aggressive fish?
No.
They'll suck that fucking finger, man. Because I was that kid that had to touch all the fish. And they do, they grab a hold of your finger and they're trying to eat it, basically, right? Like they kind of suck things back, is how they eat. And if it's attached to something, well, they're fish. They don't know. They just keep sucking it back. So it definitely can make like a bruised line on fingers and other things. So
Was there fish in that water?
yeah.
'Cause didn't they say there was snakes too?
Yeah, there's snakes, there's turtles, there's fish, there's aquatic bugs. There's so many things in that water, right?
What is aquatic bugs?
Bugs that are in water.
But what would they
I don't
be?
know. I am not a bug expert. I just took the term aquatic bugs. I'm not a fan of bugs, so I didn't want to look too much into it. So like I like going in the water. I don't want to be terrified of the water, so I'm like, that's fine. Bugs.
Fair enough.
But there's also a pack of wild dogs in the area. There's wild pigs, there's deer. There are so many animals. There's coyotes. There's tons of animals that feed on things.
Now, this might be a little bit off topic, so you can remove it if you want. But did you also hear about how there was a homeless man living in that forest?
Yeah.
And he was supposed to, they think it's the guy that went into the restaurant?
I mean, that would make sense. Mr. Bojangles was my number one. I thought that's who did it. I thought possibly that John Mark Byers, once I did some of the research, he didn't. But I was like, then it really has to be Mr. Bojangles. It's such a coincidence. He went into that restaurant muddy, covered in blood. But you have to also think this was 1993 in Arkansas. If he came across a scene of something horrific happening, he's not going to run into the first police officer he sees and says, "Hey, Mr. Policeman, I am this black man covered in blood and mud, and hey, something horrible is happening to 3 children just in the woods there." He is prime suspect number 1, regardless. So they found the bag with the like razors and the clothing and stuff. I don't doubt that was his. They found like a brown jacket or something at one point. I don't doubt that was his. The hair, the Negro hair that they found, and that's their term, not mine, that they found at the crime scene, I don't doubt that was his. I don't believe he had the time to do it. I think he came across something and for whatever reason was able to get away from said coming across and headed to the restaurant in a frenzy and needed to get cleaned up. And I don't think he had any ill involvement or intentional ill involvement, at least. I mean, I could be wrong, but that's my thought.
I just didn't know that there was someone living there.
Yeah, I mean, it's no different than here, right? In certain areas, there's going to be people.
But when you like research some of the crime scene,
yeah,
I only found it because someone commented that there was someone living there. They don't really tell you that they found stuff that would be like, yeah, they found stuff that was somebody else's, but they don't think of it being like a homeless person living there, right? So
oh, exactly. When asked if during the autopsies he was able to tell the difference between a wound that was inflicted before death and a wound that was inflicted after death, Peretti said he was only able to tell with some of the injuries. We won't use that opportunity to continue to say how bad we think he is at his job. Peretti testified that Christopher Byers had injuries to his head, neck, genital, and anus, the right leg, back, right, and left arms. Strands of hair-like material were found on the left posterior thighs, on the back of the thigh, and under the bindings of the left ankle. You know, that is a bit confusing. Hair-like material? Is it hairs? Is it not hairs? Is it...
But I think sometimes they classified, if I remember correctly in a video I watched, hair-like material as like wool.
Okay.
So like different, like the shoelace would have something like a hair-like, because they take it and they break it down and they see what's in it or what kind it is or whatever.
Okay, that's fair. But by the time you're testifying in trial, you should know whether it's a hair or...
Again, though, I'm not a fan of him, so...
I mean, we're just pointing out some infractions maybe in his work. Okay. The right wrist was bound to the right ankle with a black shoelace, and the left wrist was bound to the left ankle with a white shoelace. We know that one of the shoelaces was cut in half. There were contusions or black eyes, the abrasions on the nose, ear with bruising and scratches that could have been caused by fingernails. If you have a black eye, would that show up instantly?
No.
If you got punched in the eye, like it might be red, it might swell, but doesn't it take a while? Like, I don't know if maybe the term is just, he's using the term for it is gonna be a black eye, or it would be a black eye at some point. When I think black eye, I'm like, well, that was obviously done way before, and that was never reported that he had any eye injuries prior. So maybe it's just a term that he's using.
The thing that I feel too, though, is like, what color are these bruises? Because the bruises would give you a timeline.
Yeah, for sure. Like the one kid had a yellowing bruise on his inner thigh. I think it was Christopher Byers.
Yes.
That was way before. Bruises go yellow, they take days. That had to have been a previous...
So like these ones, right? When they first pop out, they're like really dark, or they're really like a dark color, and then they slowly turn purple. And do you know what I mean? So like
they start off light, right? They kind of start off with like a light red and like a swelling, right. And then they go darker over time. I don't know how death and decomposition affects bruising, so I guess it's probably can't say too much as to what it would do, because I don't know if you get a bruise right before death, does the stopping of your heart change the color of the bruise versus if you had continued to have blood flow. Do you know what I mean?
Right, but that's like, again, if he did his job, he should put that in to
100%. And I think some of this comes to like we've made abundantly clear, his lack of experience with talking to, let's say, a jury that are all like, I think they're referred to as lay people that don't understand this stuff, right? Like, so the average everyday person, they're not going to understand this. So you're on the stand, you really need to be clear. This bruise was this color, meaning it had occurred prior to, like, and okay, so pre-mortem, are you talking an hour before? Are you talking right before? Are you talking a week before? When, like, pre-mortem is prior to death. He had 8 years prior to death. When did this bruise occur? I need to know, did it occur during the attack? Because if it did, why is it yellow? If it didn't, then explain what coloring we're looking at, right? Like,
again, it should be in your notes, though. Like,
exactly.
Like the autopsy should say exactly that for people, for that reason.
Because when you're saying a yellow bruise, that means a bruise that's in healing. Well, it's not healing if it occurred during the attack. When did it heal? At what part of decomposition did that bruise heal? Because I'm going to guess it didn't, right? So for it to already be yellow, it means that happened at least 2 days prior. That's significant. He had a yellowing bruise on his inner thigh. I know when I've had bruises on my inner thighs where they've come from. And I wasn't 8. So I'm just saying, maybe make this clear, because that seems significant, right? Like, right. And I'm sorry if that sounds callous, but like at this point, Peretti, the fuck, man? Like,
and people have to realize that children heal a lot faster than an adult will heal.
Yeah, so this bruise could literally have been a day or two prior.
Yeah, whereas an adult, it could be 2 weeks prior.
Right? Let's see if we can make it any further without saying how bad this guy is at his job. Peretti testified that there was evidence of genital mutilation. There are multiple cutting wounds around the anal orifice and the perineum area. The anal and the rectal mucosa were hyperemic and injected, meaning that it was red and there was some capillary dilation there. There were cutting wounds and abrasions on the buttocks. The genital mutilation was multiple gouging type injuries where the skin has just been pulled out. The skin overlying the shaft of the penis was carved off, leaving the shaft of the penis after the skin has been removed, and the scrotal sac and testes are all missing. The whole genital area is missing except for the internal aspects of the shaft of the penis, and around the area are multiple gouging wounds, stab wounds, and cutting wounds. So again, they're not stab wounds as you would think you take a knife and stab into. He's talking about gouging. He's literally explaining animal predation, just not calling it that. Like, he's explaining word for word what it looks like when animals take pieces of skin, but he's just calling it stabbing, it's not that.
And I think for some people to view it better, think of like when you get bit by a horsefly. They take a chunk out of you.
Those little fuckers, do they really?
Yeah, that's why I have a tattoo on my side, because I got bit by a horsefly and it took
Ow, son of a bitch. But yeah, like, so they're gouging, they're ripping. And he even calls it cutting wounds, right? Like, all these wounds, like, stabbing is a deep, penetrating wound.
Right.
These aren't those. They're all, like, I don't want to call them superficial. They're all surface area wounds. None of them penetrate below the surface. Animal predation. Just saying.
He explained that these types of irregular cutting wounds, gouging wounds, not knowing the instrument, you can get these type of wounds from a knife, piece of glass. Usually the knife or the object is being twisted and the victim is moving to get those irregular edges. Along with the legs and the area of the genital mutilation on the thighs, on the top of the thighs, and inner aspects of the thighs, there are multiple contusions or bruising inside the thighs. The prosecution asks what would cause that type of bruising and that type of injury, to which Peretti said these type of injuries are normally seen in a female rape victim when they're trying to spread their legs for penetration, or it may be hit with an object. Also, that's a possibility.
I'm sorry, that does not sound the same at all.
No, because it says they're trying to spread their legs.
Which would indicate the bruising, the yellow bruise on the thigh. So yes, if he was raped a few days prior, but also keep in mind, this is a male.
I was just going to say, he's not a female though, so why would it be the front? It'd be the back.
Exactly. And if you, again, graphic warning, trigger warning, I don't know what to call it at this point. If you have got this far and you're gonna get upset by something I say now, I mean, you should have been upset a long time ago. So just heads up, the whole rest of the fucking episode, there's gonna be shit I'm gonna say that you might get offended with. If it was in from the back and you separate the thighs, you wouldn't have a bruise on the front of the thigh.
Right.
There's not enough space, right? So, and also, a female rape victim, again, I'm not a doctor, but I have yet to meet a penis that rips off part of the skin when it's trying to penetrate a vagina.
Yep.
Because that's just not how that works. I sound like I'm making fun, like joking about the situation. I'm not, I'm making fun of the guy's fucking moronic comparison. How? His penis was degloved. We've talked about this, right? Female rape victims would not have similar injuries. There's no gouging. There's no cutting. There's no slicing. There's no, like, dude. But I feel like he doesn't understand how the process of a penis entering a vagina works to make this fucking comparison. It pisses me off how bad it is. I'm sorry. I might have to cut all of that out because that's just a real fucking rant. But my God, dude. The comparison. Have you seen other injuries like this? Yes, but it's normally a female rape victim. What the fuck?
And it's different parts.
Right?
be the same. I don't get it.
Like, I'm not saying that there's never been a female that's been raped and had her vaginal area mutilated. I'm not saying that at all. I'm not saying that couldn't possibly happen. I'm saying you cannot compare, like, you can't say, yes, I've seen these types of injuries before, as in a degloved penis, the gouging, the lacerations, the stabbing, the cutting, and I've seen them on a female rape victim. I'm just saying you can't, the injuries cannot be compared. There's no way this guy sat up with his medical degree on a stand in front of all these people and went, yep, I've seen similar injuries on a female rape victim. You dumb fucking moron. Sorry.
To me, it's just literally two different parts. So maybe the bruising, but that's about it. Like you
Yeah,
can't
like,
say anything else.
right? Like, okay, yes, the female rape victim might have a similar bruise on the inside of their thigh. 100%. They most likely do. However, his bruise was yellow, so it probably happened 2 days prior. That doesn't count.
Right.
Right. The reason I'm getting so angry and passionate, and Sophia would really fucking have her stop flying. So I'm just flying right now. But I'm so angry because it's an injustice to these boys that these guys are doing. These boys deserved to have the best of the best working on this case to find and bring to justice the person or persons that did this. And when he makes stupid fucking comments like this, it's an injustice to the boys. So it pisses me off. I'm sorry. In a photograph showing the back of the anal region, the thighs, and the bruising situated on the thighs and also on the backs of the legs and the lower legs, there's some sort of pattern. So two linear bands of contusion, and in the space, which is called pallor, which is uninvolved, which indicates an object such as a piece of wood. A large object was inflicted there to strike there to cause this type of injury. Also on the back of the legs, what we would classify as defense wounds or bruising to the back of the legs. I'm not quite sure how you get defense wounds on the backs of your legs, but he's talking about scratches on the back of the legs, which, yes, could be defense wounds or, again, could be claw scratches from turtles. Peretti also found on Christopher Byers injuries to the mouth and to the ears similar to what was found on the other two and made the same conclusions. But the injuries that were around the genital area were inflicted by some sharp object, such as a knife. He said he believed that at least 3 different weapons were used to cause Christopher's injuries, one for the injuries to his head, one for the injuries to his back, and one for the injuries to his genitals. The cause of death for Christopher Byers was multiple injuries. There was no evidence of drowning in Christopher Byers, except he did state on the autopsy report that there were. He did say that it wasn't the cause of death, that drowning wasn't the cause of death for Christopher Byers, but there was fluid in his lungs, and there was the frothy, foamy.
And he was the one that was the farthest, right? The one that had
No, that was Michael Moore. Christopher Byers was the one that had the degloving sitch.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's only so Peretti said that Stevie and Michael died of drowning and that Christopher Byers died of multiple injuries. However, as you'll see if we ever make it down the list, there is other autopsy people that say otherwise. They feel very strong, and people that are like superior to Peretti, they say that all 3 boys died of drowning, which I tend to agree, seeing as on the autopsy it lists the same findings for all 3 boys. How did he have the water in the lungs and the frothy, I can't remember what, frothy, foamy, whatever it was called, the mucusy, whatever?
Yeah.
How did he have that the same as the other 2, but he didn't drown?
Peretti testified that he felt that the nature of the case and the publicity that it was receiving, it was best not divulge the injuries to the media or the prosecuting attorney, saying it would be important so it wouldn't be common knowledge, so people wouldn't have something to talk about. You know, people in my experience tend to spread rumors about certain types of cases, so that on this particular case here, these cases here, that would eliminate that, and I thought it would be beneficial just to keep the communication with subsequently with the West Memphis Police Department and the Brent Davis and the prosecuting attorney's office, and not give any information out to anyone else at that time. And then as subsequently as the investigation took place, I had meetings with the police, the prosecuting attorney, and the defense counsels.
Okay, so this statement is actually really important too because the investigators, so like Jerry Driver and fuck, I can't remember the other guy's name. Anyway, so the investigators, one of them had to actually write a letter to Peretti saying, which we will cover later, but basically say, hey, dude, dipshit, we need some information. I need to be able to investigate this case, so I need to know. Like, he didn't even give the police the cause of death. He wouldn't give any of this information out. And so they're trying to investigate this case, but they don't even have the cause of death. Like, and the stupid thing is, he wouldn't give the police the information they needed to continue their investigation. However, majority of the shit was already leaked day one when
Right.
the police put it over the radio initially. So a lot of this information was already out. So when they claim later that there's no way that Damien and Jason could have known any of this information because nobody had told anybody. The fucking cops did day one. So you can't say because the autopsy wasn't released that nobody would know. Fuck off.
Stidham, Miss Kelly's defense lawyer, asked, Dr. Peretti, you don't have to be a pathologist or a medical examiner to look at these bodies when they were recovered and determine that there were head injuries. There were injuries to their faces, and there were injuries to their other parts of their body, including the genital mutilation. You don't have to be a pathologist to see those things, do you? To which Peretti replies, no, sir. Stidham then says, sounds like a silly question, but it would be obvious to anyone who was standing there and had seen it. Peretti replies, that's correct. Stidham then asks about the injuries Peretti described to the victim's ears, asking if there was any evidence to suggest that it was definitely caused by oral sex. If there was any evidence whatsoever to indicate that these victims were sodomized or raped anally. If there was any evidence or trauma or lacerations or anything of that nature. And about the victims' anal orifices being dilated. Isn't it true that that could be caused by the fact that the bodies were in water? The most likely source of the dilation of the anuses of the victims was probably the water, which Peretti stated, I found no evidence of semen in the oral cavities. No semen was detected in the anal orifices and canals. There were no injuries noted to the anal orifices or the anal mucosa. The only thing I saw was the hyperemia or reddening of the mucosa. You get dilation from being in water, postmortem relaxation, or if a small object may have been, such as a finger, may have been inserted into the anus, but more so decomposition. Stidham asked, isn't it true, Dr. Peretti, that if someone were sodomized or raped, especially if you're a young child, that you would expect to find these types of injuries? Peretti replies, my experience dealing with many children of rape, I found anal trauma.
Yeah. So there was none. I mean, thank God, right? Like, of course, thank God there is no sign of rape, but then stop saying that it is when there's no sign of it, right? He keeps bringing it up over and over again to try and indicate that there is, but there just isn't, which thank God there isn't.
And he's just contradicting himself.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, so this next part that we're going to read, Cash is going to read as Stidham, and I will read as Peretti. We're going to do this because it's basically back and forth questions, and just to make it easier. So Stidham is the defense attorney, Peretti. I'm volunteering to be the dipshit.
So, you would expect to find that if the victim had been sodomized,
Yes.
was there any indication, Dr. Peretti, that any of the victims were choked?
There were no, although there were some abrasions or scrapes on the neck region, there was no evidence of any type of strangulation.
Dr. Peretti, if you were told that one of the victims was choked, specifically the victim Byers was choked with a big old stick, would you expect to find some evidence, some abrasions, bruising, a line of demarcation, something indicating choking?
I would expect to find a pattern or injury on the neck and the underlying neck muscles.
Did you find any such patterns?
No,
Did you find any such patterns on the victim Byers specifically?
no.
Was there any abrasions or injury to the strap muscles of the neck?
Nope.
Were there any fractures of the larynx or how do you say that?
Hyoid bone? No.
Would you expect to find those had a victim been choked?
Well, you may not find fractures of hyoid bone because in young children it's very difficult to fracture it, but I would expect to find hemorrhage.
So, does it appear to be any? Does it appear to be any evidence of sodomy or choking on any of these victims?
Um, nope. So, yeah, I mean, y'all are welcome, by the way, that we condensed some of this because we were going to read the whole testimony and you'd have been just as annoyed through the entire episode as you probably were for that little bit. So, you're welcome. Okay, so during Jesse Miskelly's trial, Peretti said that due to the fact the boys' bodies had been submerged in water for a period of time, then laid on the bank for several hours in the sun and the heat before the coroner arrived, that he couldn't give a time of death. However, during Damien's trial, he not only gave a time of death, he gave a very specific time of death, between 1 to 5 a.m., which actually became the basis for one of the appeals for Jesse, Jason, and Damien due to the fact that they all had alibis for that time. But their appeal is denied. That time of death is likely not true because Stevie Branch's stomach contained a green substance. When Stevie had first asked his mom if he could go out with friends, she told him to be home for 4:30. She had made him green beans and left them for him to eat. So the green contents of his stomach could mean that he did go home for 4:30. He ate the green beans. Remember, according to David Jacoby, Terry Hobbs told him that Stevie was out riding bikes with his friends and he needed to be back before dark. So if Pam told Stevie that he had to be home by 4:30, did Terry see Stevie and Stevie ate the green beans, then asked Terry if he could go back out with friends? And if he did, why didn't Terry Hobbs say that to Pam or the police? Meaning, by 1 o'clock, those green beans would have digested,
Right, because
is
it
what that
takes
whole
like
thing.
roughly an hour.
Yeah, they wouldn't have been sitting in his stomach. So that gives us some indication to the time of death. Plus, like we talked about before, the mosquitoes, the whole, like, there's a lot of reasons why. There was also how many people searching the woods for these kids. If they were still alive at 1 a.m., somebody would have seen them, somebody would have heard them.
Right.
Right? There's no way they were, unless they were killed somewhere else and brought back to the woods, which all the evidence points to that's not what happened. Someone would have seen them. There's no way the killer or killers managed to hold them quietly while everybody was searching the woods. It's just, there's no way. It's important to note that Peretti was not a board certified pathologist. He took the test and failed, like we said.
The prosecution's theory was that the boys were beaten, cut, and sexually assaulted and drowned. The defense saw a slightly different story. Not only did they believe their clients were innocent, but they also believed that some of the injuries to the boys may have been caused by animal predation. The bodies were found in water, in a very rural area and in the woods. There were a lot of animals around, and it's possible that those animals could have caused some of those wounds. Specifically, turtle predation. It wasn't until 4 years after the trial that the bite marks and theory of animal predation came out. So there were marks on the boys' bodies that looked like bite marks. Imprints of Jason Baldwin's, Jesse Miskelly's, and Damien Eccles' teeth were done, and none of them matched the marks on the bodies. Around this time, many people believe that John Mark Byers may have been responsible for the murders. One thing that didn't look great for him was the fact that he had his teeth removed by an oral surgeon in April of 1997. While Byers offered conflicting explanations for the loss of his teeth, including claims that they were knocked out in a fight or lost to periodontal disease, dental records confirm the extraction took place nearly 4 years after 1993 murders, right around the time when the bite marks were under scrutiny. People also believe that the bite marks look like they could have been caused by Terry Hobbs. Also, I just have to say, for John Mark Byers, I think he just made himself look bad.
Oh, he totally did. But no different than what Damien did.
Right.
Right? Like Damien's,
Exactly.
regardless of whether you think Damien did it or not, he did not help his case at all at any point in this. But he was 18. Anyway, we'll go into that or later. But yeah, John Mark Byers, much like Damien, did not do himself any favors, especially throughout the Paradise Lost filming and specifically the second filming,
Yes.
the second movie. I can't remember what it was called. Revelations.
Yes. I was going to say it starts with an R.
Yeah, he did not do himself any favors. He looked like a nut job, and of course, people pointed to him. This teeth thing, that's very suspicious, right? They find bite marks, and he's like, "Oh, I gotta have my teeth taken out." Uh-oh. Like, dude, your timing could not have been worse.
Yes.
But he also was out all night looking for those boys and not out, I'm going out by myself looking. Like there was people around him all night. He was accounted for all night, right? He talked to the cops. He talked to like he was with his wife. He was with Dana Moore. He was like he talked to the cops again. He didn't really have the opportunity. He just didn't help himself at all.
Yeah, he just made himself look terrible.
100%.
While it may seem like an insignificant factor, whether the injuries were caused by animals or the killer/killers, it's actually really significant due to Jesse Miskelly's confession, which we are going to go through in a later episode. When Ridge said Jason had a knife, what did he cut with the knife? What did you see him cut? Or who did you see him cut?
So again, we're going to do the back and forth. Cash will be Jesse. I will do Ridge, and I'll do Gitchell because otherwise it won't make sense if you ask yourself the questions.
I saw him cut one of the little boys.
All right, where did he cut him? Where did he cut him at?
He was cutting him in the face.
Cutting him in the face? All right. Another boy was cut. I understand. Where was he cut at?
At the bottom.
On his bottom? Was he face down and he was cutting on him, or?
He was.
And then Gitchell steps in. Now you're talking about bottom. Do you mean right here?
Yes.
In his groin area?
Yes.
Okay. Ridge. Do you know what his penis is?
Yeah, that's where he was cut at.
That's where he was cut? Keep this last question in, do you know what his penis is? These police officers said they had no idea that Jesse Miskelly had a learning deficiency, that his IQ was so low. They claimed they had no idea. Yet they asked a 17-year-old if he knew what a penis is. So just keep that in mind when we go through the testimony.
If the wounds were in fact animal predation and Jesse was wrong about the wound being caused by Jason, then his whole confession falls apart. His confession is already shaky. Dr. Werner Spitz, Dr. Michael Baden, Dr. Richard Souveron, Dr. John Opevin, the defense forensic pathologist, testified that the injuries to the victims, specifically genital mutilation of Stevie Branch and Chris Byers, were caused by post-mortem animal predation. These experts collectively argued that the injuries lacked the characteristics of knife cuts or stab wounds, contradicting the prosecution's theory that the wounds were inflicted by a knife attack while the victims were alive. Dr. Werner Spitz testified that looking at the body of Michael Moore, I see a pattern on the right shoulder. The pattern is all part of one event. It is inconsistent with a tool like a serrated knife. This seems to look like a paw of a large animal. There are also scratches that look to me like animal mutilation. The left upper eyelid, the left nostril, and the ridge of the nose, all of which show injuries reminiscent of animal predation. In the 48 series exhibit, photographs 48M and 48L do show areas of the skull that are fractured. The bony part of the skull is indented. Looking at the types of fractures, particularly where one meets the other, you can see where one fracture was stopped by the other, and there are marks that are consistent with tooth marks. These injuries are not like those that might be caused by a hammer. Moreover, an 8-year-old skull is a lot more resilient and has a lot more fibrous tissue in it than that of an older person. Where you see fractures in a skull like this, there is an element of tearing. You would not see that in an older person. If you look at the injuries that are on the body, you see claw marks from some kind of large animal that might be able to go into the water. My opinion is that all 3 boys died of drowning. The process of drowning involves, among other things, the absorption of water in the bloodstream. The absorption of water dilutes the bloodstream, and there is an imbalance of chemicals in the blood. There is more pressure in the bloodstream as a result of that, and a drowning victim often bleeds more from the same injury than someone who was injured similarly but died of a different cause. My view is that the fractures that I found on the skull are likely post-mortem because the skin is associated with them did not bleed significantly. Looking at the injuries to the victim Moore's face, my opinion is that he shows a number of injuries, including those to the left eyelid and other areas that are consistent with the kinds of injuries that are inflicted by aquatic and marine animals. A number of types of animals will do this.
Just looking at the initial photograph, you can see the artifacts of drowning when water mixes with the protein in the airways, which causes foam. There are nibbles on both eyelids and what I take to be biting on the left cheek. There is a rough area on the left cheek, which is a form of animal biting. That area and licking with a rough tongue. Dogs and cats have those kind of tongues, and perhaps other animals as well. These injuries to the eyelids on Mr. Branch are similar to those on Mr. Moore. Looking at the injuries, which in my opinion you need to look at as a group. I view the injuries to the lips as consistent with those that would have been caused by an animal. I do not see injuries looking at what you are showing me, including 48R, that is consistent with a beating and a knifing. Nope, there is a close-up of the left cheek, which is photograph 48T. These are not knife wounds. Looking at the photograph in this series, including 48U, which shows the body further down, and 48V, which shows the left side of the face, all of these are injuries sustained after death. I'm not sure about the superficial scratches, but the significant injuries, gouging type, and bites are not bloody. These look like tooth marks from an animal, animals that would have claws or nails or some sort. Dogs, perhaps a turtle. I don't know that I can distinguish the type of animals that would have likely made these injuries. It is possible that some of the injuries may have occurred, particularly those to the lips, when there was still some blood pressure. Looking at the totality of the evidence, I see no chipped teeth or defects that would be consistent with a punch to the lip or a mouth area. Like exactly what you and I were saying earlier, Cash.
Right.
Looking at the area in the back of Mr. Branch's head near the spinal column, I do see evidence of some degree of force, some kind of solid object that caused a bruise. The abrasion that covers the area is irregular and it is rough. It is not entirely consistent with a tree branch, particularly because right next to the area is where some kind of animal both bit and licked the tissue. Looking at some of the injuries to the top of the head, I do not see evidence of a significant blow to the head. I do see what, in my opinion, especially when the scalp is reflected, as shown in Exhibit 48AA, what appear to me to be tooth marks. This is not a post-mortem injury. It does have a hemorrhage underneath it. It could have been sustained when this person was in the process of dying. It is possible that a person who dies by drowning would have been rendered unconscious before drowning. There's an area of the skull that shows a fracture, but it is unusual. This is not consistent with a strangulation or with some kind of fall. There is no related injuries. The area that is fractured here is very difficult to reach. It is very deep and it is concealed from the surface of the body. Looking at another picture of the same person, the photograph shows the left side of the chin. I do not see a stab wound, a cut, or gouging here. It is hard to tell exactly when this would have occurred, but there is no bruise discoloration. However, there is also no cut in the tissue made during the autopsy. That would assist us in identifying the hemorrhage. I agree with Dr. Peretti's signing off Mr. Branch as a drowning death. I don't believe that I see any injury that would associate with a loss of consciousness. I do see a wide array of man-made injuries here. Dr. Peretti did not find any hemorrhage in the area of the ligatures, which would tend to mean that the victim was not fighting against the bindings. Paragraph 48 double D corresponds with medical examiner number 331. So Mr. Byers or Christopher. This person's face shows injuries to the tip and the bridge of the nose and superficial scrapings to the left upper eyelid. There are some triangular shaped bite marks, like the bell shapes, right? Some of the injuries are like those found in Mr. Branch. The photographs show evidence consistent with drowning. Photograph 48E shows an area of mutilation, a tearing of the genitalia. This was not done by a knife. It shows claw marks. Looking at these further photographs, I do not find any evidence that he was beaten. I see evidence that he was mutilated after death, including the edges of the scrotum and penis, and what would appear to be claw marks. Looking at close-up shots, including 48FF and 48F, I see no evidence of knife wounds. I see claw marks and irregular wounds that are inconsistent with what a knife would do. A knife would leave a sharp surface. Looking at a photograph, you can see that the skin was pulled off the penis, and you see tearing of the tissue and numerous claw marks, tooth marks, and bite marks around this whole area. Having handled knives and cutting instruments with around 60,000 bodies, I can tell you that this is not caused by a sharp instrument like a knife or scissors. I see some puncture wounds in the crotch area. These are all post-mortem injuries, and looking at the injury on the top of this person's head, I do not believe that shows stab wounds. First, it does not go into the bone. Second, the skin on the top of the head is extremely thin. It does not look like a cut. It looks like a tear. Autopsy number 331 is Mr. Byers. He is the person we're talking about. His face does not appear to me to have been the subject of a beating. I don't see anything here that is consistent with a knife wound. To me, the injuries that I see here are not consistent with the application of a full force blow by someone who is 16 or older. I see injuries that to me are consistent with bodies being addressed by animals that may be moving them around. Okay, so I'm going to interject here because I do have a little issue with this, even though I like this pathologist better. Animals did not cause all these injuries. And if we at any point have seemed like we have said that, that's not what we're saying. Animals can't tie the boys up. You know, like animals did not do this. Animals, I believe, did cause the majority of the injuries after the humans did. Right?
I was gonna say, if the animals, if it's only animals, how do they get blows to the head?
Exactly. I think I can't say for sure but this is how I'm interpreting what he's saying. I think he's trying to say that all the wounds that are being called stab wounds and the cutting and the gouging, that those are caused by animals. But where it sounds confusing and sounds like he's saying it was animals that killed them, that's not what I think he means. They did suffer head trauma from the person or persons that did this. But the wounds on the head where if you get hit on the head hard enough and it breaks the skin, right, then you have a cut. So then when you go into the water, the open wound animals are going to be attracted to the open wounds first.
Right.
And so the animals kind of changed how that wound looked, if that makes sense. So they got hit on the head with whatever they got hit on the head with. Because of his statements here, it sounds more like, to me, it was beaten with hands. I don't know, like maybe a stick, but I don't think there was like branches or hammers or 2x4s. I don't think those were used. I think it was, they got hit, they got knocked unconscious. The animals made the wounds look so much worse than they were when they were tied up and put in the water.
Right.
That's how I'm interpreting. I know he's coming across sounding like it was all animals that did all this. I don't think that's what he's saying.
I think he should also reword it a bit and just mention
for sure
at the beginning, just being like, listen, we're just talking about this.
For sure.
I see.
Yeah. And I mean, maybe he's not saying it that. Maybe he is saying, I think all these wounds were caused by animals. If that's the case, I disagree with him. I don't, I would like to think, I mean, I guess I'm giving him a pass, which I wouldn't give to Peretti, but I think he didn't explain it correctly. I think it really came across like he's saying animals did this. I don't think there's no,
Yeah.
like, I don't care how wild these animals are. They can't hogtie kids and put them in the water and wrap their clothing around stick. Animals did not do that. There was people involved.
Right. Yeah, he could have just added more to it.
Yeah.
There's some fractures here that we have previously discussed in the skull. One of them is a radiating fracture. It was caused by some kind of blunt trauma, but I have no evidence of injury to the brain or to the membranes of the brain. To me, it seems like a post-mortem injury. Mr. Byers died of drowning, in my opinion. All 3 boys died of drowning. I disagree with Dr. Peretti's view that he died of multiple injuries. I also disagree that there is any evidence of sexual assault on these young men by a male. There is no evidence of sodomy. I don't see any abnormal dimensions. In my view, a qualified forensic pathologist would not have found a valid scientific basis for evidence of sexual assault here. It is true generally that a normal part of an autopsy process, tissue samples are taken from various wound sites. In a case like this, you would take a representative sections. You would then prepare a microscopic slide. You look at the tissues and you can assess whether there is a hemorrhage. That helps you understand whether the wound was inflicted before or after death. According to Dr. Peretti's report in the Moore autopsy, microscopic slides were prepared from tissue in the area of the ligatures, the wrists and ankles. With Mr. Moore, he found no hemorrhage around the right wrist, but he did find hemorrhage around the right ankle. Similarly, he found some hemorrhaging in the left ankle. He found none in the anus and rectum. However, he took no slides from any of the injuries that could be characterized as animal predation. Similarly, in the Branch autopsy, he found no hemorrhage in either the right ankle or the right wrist, or in the left ankle or left wrist, under the ligatures. There was no slide taken for any potential animal predation injuries in Mr. Branch. With Mr. Byers, there are no hemorrhages found in the microscopic slide. There are some bacterial colonies found in the slide of the penis, where there was a degloving injury. There were no slides taken of the areas of injury. Thus, when Dr. Peretti wrote in his letter that the samples demonstrated hemorrhaging indicative of ante-mortem injury and not post-mortem injuries, the autopsy reports do not indicate the preparation of any microscopic slides that would corroborate that statement. The statement makes no sense in view of the context of the autopsy report. I examined the tissue slides made available to me, and none of them changed my opinions regarding the animal predation. As to Dr. Peretti's third criticism concerning his physical examination of the genital area, injuries to Mr. Byers, and a description of bridging of the soft tissue, the wounds indicating the use of a sharp instrument, is an interpretation I disagree with. First, his statement is incorrect. In part, this is because Dr. Peretti is incorrect that you do not necessarily have bridging in circumstances of a bite wound by an animal. In order to have bridging, you need crushing of the skin as well. Reviewing page 833 of the Miss Kelly trial transcript, I disagree that this is some kind of knife wound. You see that there is skin missing on the left cheek. There is tissue torn out. It is animal predation. In the Byers autopsy, where Dr. Peretti opines that there are multiple gouging injuries, I believe that this is consistent with predation. The scrotum has been pulled away. A knife does not leave a ragged edge like that. There is a picture in Dr. Knight's book that I can show that depicts a scrotum like a scrotum that is bitten off like the one here. Having heard Dr. Peretti's testimony in response to a series of questions about a child being grabbed by both ears in relation to Mr. Branch, I am disturbed by the fact that there are no injuries on both ears. Also, the entire left side of the face was involved in trauma from biting and licking. The opinion he gave sounds like voodoo. I recall first seeing these photographs. I was told nothing about them and was told to call back with my views. I called back without hesitation and said these were animal predation. I just have to say too, is like if you've ever felt the dog tongue, it is so rough.
Yeah.
There was evidence that a knife was at the scene. One of the shoelaces used to tie Michael Moore was cut in half with a knife. Whether that knife was used on the boys or not, we don't know for sure. Forensic pathologists hired by the defense, Dr. Werner Spitz, Dr. Henry Lee, and Dr. Michael Baden, all concluded in 2007 that injuries to Chris Byers' genital area and other lacerations were consistent with aquatic animal predation after the bodies were in the water. Analysis indicated the injuries to the penis and scrotum were consistent with turtle feeding, which often leave sharp, jagged wounds. Gouge marks on the inner thighs were interpreted as potential turtle claw marks, not incisions from a knife.
Critics and analysts pointed out that the lack of blood at the scene, the water was relatively clear, suggested that the severe wounds were inflicted after the boys were dead and the heart had stopped beating, so post-mortem, which supports the theory of the animal scavenging. Experts also testified that the alleged knife wounds did not follow the cleanly incised edges of a knife and were not consistent with a human attacker's knife marks. Furthermore, a forensic expert determined that the wounds were consistent with biting and pulling from local wildlife. The boys were in the water for approximately 15 hours and pressed down into the mud. Aquatic insects may alter the appearance of the remains. Large animals such as turtles, large fish, and large crustaceans will cause tissue damage that in some cases may mimic trauma to the body. Smaller fishes like crabs, shrimps, and invertebrates prey on soft tissues and if given the opportunity can completely deflesh exposed parts of the body. Fish, turtles, and other animals may aggressively feed on remains. One thing to note is that the damage to the bodies seems to increase the closer they get to the 10-mile bayou. So Christopher Byers was found the closest to the 10-mile bayou. So when the boys' bodies went into the water, they had wounds already that were bleeding. So it's not necessarily just the things living in the creeks because it's often dried up, but you have all the other animals living in the area, the turtles, garfish, and such, and they follow the blood and start attacking the first body they get to, which will end up being the body with the most damage, that being Christopher Byers. Crustaceans leave circles like pits or craters when they feed because of their claws, and if the face is available, that's where they're going to feed. In particular, the parts that stick out, so lips, nose, ears, and that would be the same for other parts of the bodies, such as the genitals. The biggest problem is that Dr. Peretti did not do enough investigation during the autopsy to discover what was animal predation and what injuries were done by the killers. Nevertheless, the animals did not remove the clothes and stick them to the water with sticks. The animals did not cause the head injuries, and the animals definitely did not tie them up and submerge them in the water. Right, but I mean, either way, it is significant as to how the injuries occurred because, like we said, in Jesse Miskelly's testimony. So, and it goes to what actually happened to the boys, right? If the majority of the injuries was caused by the animals, it changes the story of how they died and what happened. So,
it's one part of the story that they got right.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, if only the rest of them could get things
right. At the end of the day, they're still dead. There's still somebody that killed them, which we totally get, but it just changes the possibility of who did it, I think. So,
right.
Well, that was another heavy one, so we'll stop there. So that's it for Moms on Mics this week.
Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Moms on Mics Podcast, on TikTok at Moms on Mics, and join our Facebook group, Moms on Mics.
If anyone has any topics you would like us to cover, or if you have any questions or suggestions, you can email us at momsonmics@gmail.com or submit through our website, momsonmics.com.
We would also appreciate it if you could rate and review us on whatever platform you're listening on. It really helps the podcast move up on their charts so it gets more exposure. I hope you join us again next week. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.